You've heard it said that you need to be a good talker to be a good salesperson, but we're here to tell you the real story. This is the real story with Adam and Sherry, the coaching edition. I'm Adam Hamalian,
And I'm Sherry Hutchens.
and this is where two broker associates use their 40 years of skills to help train other agents. We focus on increasing your professionalism, fine tuning your passion so that you can have a lifelong profitable career in real estate. All right, Sherry, how are we doing today?
We're doing great. It's a beautiful day. Feels like spring, a little chilly, but okay.
Yeah, spring is the best time to be in real estate. Houses look the best, flowers are in bloom, the sun
Yep.
is shining.
Yep. It's
Uh,
not raining.
it's not raining. I'm happy to be in real estate in California because that's not all true everywhere else in the world.
I've often wondered about that. Like if you're in upstate New York where it's snowing for, weeks or maybe months on end, are people buying houses? Are they going out to look at houses or does everything just stop?
Yeah, I think the cycle goes, but I'm sure that they do more in the late spring, past mudding season. Could you imagine keeping a house clean during mud season?
I don't know what mud season is.
Oh, mud season, that's where the snow is melting, but it's still a lot of moisture around. And so it's not dried out like it is in the summer. And so you just have really muddy, everything's just muddy.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah. I'm so
um,
glad I live in California.
I know this is why we have such expensive home prices here.
Although I do hate showing houses when it's 105 out. I know the people in New York are like, yeah, I'd be happy to show a house when it's 105, but 105 is hot.
Yeah, but it's a dry heat.
Yeah,
I don't
climb
even know
into
what that
an oven
means,
and
but
tell me how
whatever.
that feels.
Exactly. Yeah. Go visit your grandma in Yuma, and then it'll be like, oh, yeah, I don't like 105 so much anymore.
That's hot. I've never been there when it was in the hundreds. I've only been there in the winter when it's in the 70s.
The one time I was in Yuma was 114.
That
Yeah.
was probably just April.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. We actually are going to recap a workshop we did last week for our brokerage.
Yes.
And we focused on, I had a very clever title, which confused everybody. And it was Agent Intelligence, the Real AI.
Hmm.
And focusing on deep listening, empathy, making connections with our clients. It's kind of a undersold skill as real estate agents, and we sometimes think that you got to know all the legal side of everything, and you got to hustle and sell yourself. And in reality, one of the things that separates us from AI and actually from each other, and I think mediocre agents, is the ability to listen deeply to our clients, to understand where it is that they need, where they want to go, what they're trying to do for a couple purposes. And so we're going to focus on that today.
Yep.
What?
Great topic.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that's true about real estate agents in general is that we are a skittish lot and we get used to doing something a certain way. And whenever something changes, we are known to freak out. Uh,
Yes.
And a lot of times we freak out unnecessarily. Sometimes we freak out because there's something to freak out about.
Hmm.
9/11, the pandemic, generally the recession as a whole, and the downturn, things that were all beyond our control.
Yep.
And part of how we navigate those situations is by staying calm and measuring ourselves. And so we're going to talk about that as one of the topics. Um, yeah,
And
so
reminding ourselves as we're freaking out. You and I don't generally freak out, but a lot of people do. But we have to remind ourselves people always need a place to live.
yeah, yeah. We well, part of the reason why we don't freak out is because we have each other. And one of the things that happens in partnerships, at least ours, is we rarely freak out about the same thing at the same time. So we have somebody to say,
So true.
"Oh, it's okay." Um, and it's going to be okay. And so regardless of what it is, one of us either is slow to panic or has a deep sense of what's really going to go. So
Yeah.
I actually want to go back as we think about kind of this topic about controlling yourself and being centered. It's kind of a precursor to deep listening and empathy.
Yep.
One of the things that we were talking about was emotional IQ, and so there's 4 points the kind of the originator of it had five, but I kind of am overlapping two of them together. So the 4 points is be self-aware.
Mhm.
What are your own feelings, your thoughts, your emotions? Self-managed. So it's okay to have those feelings. What are you going to do with them? Be aware socially of what's happening. So reading the room, sensing your client or potential clients' feelings, emotions about certain something. Listen to it so that you can be sensitive to it. And then the third one is essentially managing the emotions of the room. So how are you going to reassure the client or acknowledge their fears? And so those four things are kind of that's kind of a roadmap for where we're going to go today.
And they're all linked in a way, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Very
absolutely.
similar to each other.
I think that we often say that you are the product as an agent. Like, yes, we're selling houses or apartments or putting deals together, but ultimately you win business based on who you are
Mhm.
and how you behave and your knowledge set. And so you constantly need to be working on yourself. And there's a not to get spiritual or religious, but there's in a book of the Bible, there's a list of fruit of the spirit, and they're, peace, joy, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. There you go. Got them all out.
Wow.
But then there's this other list that is all these, debauchery things. And one of my favorite ones is fits of rage. And so, like, if you're living in the flesh and you're not a spiritual person, you have fits of rage. Uh, and I just imagine bringing your boyfriend home. Mom and Dad, this is Ryan. He has fits of rage, right? It's like a non sequitur. You would never say that. You say, "Here's Ryan. He's a nice guy. He's kind. He's gentle. He's loving. He's faithful. He
He's
has
good to me.
self-control." Yeah, self-control. Yeah. So fits of rage. And I say that kind of as an exaggerated, of course. Well, actually, we both have seen fits of rage within the real estate community. But you've got to be in a place where you can control, be aware of yourself and your thoughts and feelings, and then be able to manage that because metaphorically, fits of rage is going to A, not be attractive to potential buyers and sellers, and B, blow up deals. Um, and I think that though that's a secondary emotion based on kind of fears. So what do you think are typical fears that we as real estate agents have?
Fear of rejection is a big one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because we put ourselves out there every single day, hoping to, connect with a client, get a listing, present an offer, and hope it's accepted. And rejection is a big part of what we do. You got to learn to deal with that.
We go on like 50 job interviews a year.
Hmm.
We have to put ourselves out there. So yeah, fear of rejection. All right.
Yeah.
What are some other fears?
Fear, this is a totally irrational fear. You and I both have this, that once we close escrow on a house, we're never going to sell a house again.
Yep. Yeah. We sometimes say that when we don't have an open escrow, we're unemployed.
Yep.
And it's not wrong, but it also kind of feeds into there's exemplifying that fear.
Yeah,
Uh,
when you're a commission only salesperson, and you don't have an escrow in the works and, a pending close date and hence a paycheck date, you are unemployed, right?
yeah. I remember an experienced agent who is retired now. When I was young, he said, "We as agents always fear we're never going to have the next transaction,"
Yeah.
and he goes, "And it always shows up." And when I was younger and I had nothing, I'm like, "What do you mean it always shows up?"
Yeah.
Well, now that we've been in the business 15, 25 years, someplace around 4 or 5 years, I just started getting regular business. Not that there haven't been lean years, but it became less of a I wonder where it's going to come from. And that comes with experience as you begin to build a reputation and a sphere of influence. Um, but yeah, the fear of not getting the next deal, which also is tied to fear of loss of paycheck, And loss of income, there's all sorts of fears, secondary, third fears that go with that, right? You're going to be homeless. Your kid's not going to get to go to college. Maybe it's even to the point where there's an agent who we've worked with who's like, she would feed her kids and send them to bed and she wouldn't eat because she
Yeah.
was so short on cash and
Yeah.
had to work multiple side gigs to make it. And sometimes when the
Yeah.
market is down, we have to be creative. So
Yeah.
it's these aren't irrational fears. Let me just note that these are legitimate fears that we have. All right. Um, I'm not sure there's something else. Any other things you think about that? I mean, like there's a whole bunch of fears personal to individual agents, but generally as agents as a whole.
I mean, I think that's it for me. Rejection and fear that you're never going to sell another house again, and you're going to end up living in your car or something like that, which is completely crazy. Because, like you said, the next job always comes along, and you and I have been doing this long enough that we know that to be true. I don't know. I correct me if I'm wrong, because sometimes I'm not self-aware, but I feel like I'm a little almost unflappable. I've been doing it so long, and I've been a commission-only salesperson since 1989. In my old job, I was commission only, so I prefer that. But it takes a lot to get me to freak out. I might get exasperated, but I don't have fits of rage. Uh,
Yeah.
so tell me, am I being oblivious to my
I've
own
yet to see you have fits of
behavior?
rage. I'd like to see what that would look like. Okay, no,
Yeah.
not really. Okay, so I'm going to throw another one out, which
Okay.
is maybe just specific to me. Fear
Okay.
of loss of reputation.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
And this shows up a lot of different ways. It shows up if I actually do make a mistake that potentially costs our client money. Um, and because my sphere, there's a significant portion of my sphere that all knows each other, and I live a little bit in anxiety that if I make a mistake in that pool, that one client will tell everybody else, "Oh, Adam did this one thing," and
Yeah.
then it'll all go that sphere will just dry up completely.
Yeah.
You spend a lifetime building relationships with people and not so much the reputation for the sake of reputation, but the reputation gets built based on how genuine you are and how well you care for people, and then to have the fear of a embarrassing calamity undoing that all.
Yeah.
So I live in I think that that's probably the most palpable one for me at this stage.
I think it's the biggest one for you as well. You take that very, very seriously, as do I. But I also recognize that we can control a lot of what we do. There are many things that we can't control, and things just happen sometimes.
Yeah,
And they're out of our control. And hopefully, people are going to recognize that it's out of our control and be forgiving about it. You know?
yeah. So, all right. So we have fears. I just want to legitimize some of them are real, and at different times they're more real than others. And sometimes it's just the shadow of a previous mistake hanging over you that you haven't been able to let go.
Yeah.
Brené Brown talks about it this way in her most recent book, Strong Ground. And I think she's referencing somebody else, and she uses an expression above and below the line. And that and now I forget which one is which, but in one case, uh, we see the fear in ourselves and we're able to manage it. And so we control how much it contaminates the conversation or the situation.
Mhm.
Where the other one is that we're just plainly operating out of fear and we don't know it. And then we're lashing out, or we're showing up with commission breath, or while we're supposed to be representing our client in a fiduciary way, their best interest, because of not being aware, we make mistakes that are geared towards saving our commission and keeping the deal together when really if we're reading the room we need to let the deal go, and we actually lost a listing because we failed to see that in ourselves. I think
Yeah.
one it was late in the year, and don't want to go into details, it's somebody's private story, but I think we wanted it more than our clients did, and it was fear of reputation. I think it was a lot to do with fear of reputation, and that when the agent on the other side we had a lot of respect for, and because of that, we maybe didn't listen to our clients as well as we should have.
I have a saying, you've heard me many times say, you can't want it more than your client.
Yeah.
And that means you've got to look out for their best interest, not our best interest. And I don't think you and I were in need of a paycheck for that transaction. I know the one you're talking about. We actually thought that the offer that this client got was a good offer. And whatever was going on in her world, she was unwilling to accept that offer. And as it turned out, she waited until the spring and she sold for more than she would have sold for in the fall. So it all worked out for her. But you can't want it more than the client wants it.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to that next phase then of thinking about how we read the room around us. So that was an example of maybe we didn't read it quite as well as we could have.
Hmm.
Um, so let's talk about listening and some listening skills and what we listen for.
Yeah.
On one level, we're listening for facts, and this could be in the context of a open house where a buyer is coming in to check it out, or it's a listing appointment, or really every relationship you have is a potential client. And so, making how we listen to just everybody comes
Hmm.
into play. So level one is just listening to the facts, like, tell me um, how many beds and baths you want. And then we're just working on getting that information so we can pivot to whatever the next thing is.
Hmm.
And sometimes that's an important listening level, even though it's kind of level one. Because
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Because what they say out loud and first is an important data point. That's where
Mhm.
we're starting.
Yep. Yes. At the beginning of the podcast, you said that, do you need to be an extrovert to sell real estate? Because you need to know how to talk. And yes, you need to know how to communicate, but you also, I think it's almost more important to be able to listen
Yeah,
and listen beyond what the words are saying, right?
right.
Sometimes they're saying one thing and they mean something else.
And that's kind of level two is listening for the tone of what's being said
Hmm.
and maybe feelings and emotions and things that are involved with it. I've lived in this house for 40 years.
Yeah.
Oh, you've lived a lot of life here. There's some important information I probably should ask about that so that when I say, oh, that's the ugliest chandelier I've ever seen, we would never say it that harshly. But even this, yes, here's the thing is that sometimes when you say something, you think it's just like a grain of sand. This isn't a big deal, but it
Yeah.
lands on somebody like a boulder,
Sure.
and so we might say, well, we there's a few things we'd like to do to make the house ready for market. For instance, painting and flooring, and that chandelier, we would recommend changing that chandelier. And little did you know that she brought that chandelier from her childhood home and has been in her family for 50 years, and it reminds her of her mom's dining room table at Christmas and holidays. And you just said it had to be changed. Now it still may need to be changed,
Yeah.
but you've you when you hear that somebody's been in the house for 40 years, there's some follow-up questions that need to be asked for you to better understand where those landmines are, so you're not dropping big boulders on people when you think it's a grain of sand.
Well, we had that happen at a listing appointment several years ago. We went into a house that had a very distinct feature that probably wasn't going to be attractive to many people beyond what the homeowner, how the homeowner, she loved this feature, loved it. And I got caught up in I'm going to do my job and I'm going to help you fix this house up. And so we can sell it for top dollar. And I wasn't hearing or watching what she was saying and doing. And I made her cry, you know, because I told her that this feature had to be probably covered up or removed.
Mhm.
And we didn't get the listing because of it. I was oblivious to that. I was trying to help her. And really, what I did was I hurt her feelings.
Yeah. The it's really easy for us to come with our toolkit and just assume we're using the same tools every time.
Yeah.
Our perception is for sellers, their values are they want to get the most amount of money out of it with the least amount of hassle. That's kind of the realtor mantra.
Yeah.
And I would say that on most transactions, those two are in the top three every single time. Very rarely that they're not, but there's always something else out there that comes into play, and it might be this distinctive architectural feature that they picked out themselves in this case. And even though the market as a whole might reject it, that doesn't mean that she's rejected it.
Right.
And,
Or
and
what
yeah,
wasn't ready to reject it.
or wasn't ready to reject it or wasn't ready to give up. I think that you told me one time, that, another time when you were successful in navigating this, this is before we were partners, about a mural that was in somebody's house that had to be painted. You want to tell that story?
Yeah, I got a call from a seller. He had had two previous agents who had not been able to sell his house. And I think I had sold two or three in his neighborhood. And he said, "Why are you the only one selling houses in my neighborhood when I can't sell mine?" And so I went over and walked through his home. And he was a recent widower. And his wife was an artist. And she had painted a beautiful mural on the wall, which he was reluctant to cover up. Even though he was selling that home, he was very emotionally attached to it. And I took a deep breath and said, I know your, deceased wife painted this. It's lovely. But I think it's keeping people from writing an offer on this house. And I think you need to paint it. And it was really hard. He didn't want to do it. He eventually agreed to it. I sold the house and he resented me right up to the very end of that transaction for making him paint over his wife's mural.
Yeah,
Uh, and so, he wanted to sell that house. I was his third agent. He kept saying, "I want to sell, I want to move, I need to, I want to change my life and get on with my life." But also, he hated me for making him paint that mural. I think it was closure, right?
yeah,
I mean, he'd been through the grieving process, and selling the house was him moving on to the next phase of his life. And that
yeah.
mural, yeah, I never, he never recovered from it. I ran into him years later, and he was still chilly towards me.
Yeah. Sometimes we have to play that role of being the truth teller, but apparently you were able to say it in a way that he could hear it, even if he didn't want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Really,
there must have
really
been,
hard conversations
yeah,
sometimes.
it must have been peppered with enough grace that he was able to hear it because, two previous agents were not successful in doing that.
Or he didn't take their advice because he thought he knew better.
Yeah.
So,
So, and then, so the last of the four emotional quote intelligence issues is then kind of managing the social space. And so we were just talking a little bit about that. And so it's learning how to hear what's being said and maybe hear the emotion behind it. Also hearing what's not being said and then steering the conversation through questions to guide the group through a process that is can be successful, and that takes a lot of skill. I think asking Jeff Kendall from famous for Selling Ninja as a real estate coaching model that he advocates that you should be doing only 20% of the talking and 80% of the listening.
I think
Uh,
that's true.
and I think there's a lot of value. I mean, this is part of how we hear what's happening in the room, but then also managing it by essentially steering questions that help people explore where they need to go. And we want to ask questions. I think there's two main reasons. One is to make a connection. Everybody likes to talk about themselves, about their feelings. You ask somebody about their house, and they're going to be happy to tell you about it. And they're going to give you the details. And so two things are happening. You're getting clarity about the house, but you're also making this connection with them as they answer the questions.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways that Kendall talks about maintaining this 80-20, where you're doing 20% of the talking, they're doing is learning how to ask good questions, powerful, open-ended questions that span both the purpose of clarity and connection. Um, when we do listing appointments, we like to walk through the house and ask people to tell us about their house and then tell us why they bought it. And in our heads, we get to learn not only about them, but about the house. And so we do less talking. I think it's really easy for us to talk about ourselves. And this goes back to the instant question about being an extrovert, being an introvert. Extroverts classically don't know what they think until they say it out loud. I like to say I talk in front of my eyeballs, and my wife is an introvert. She thinks behind her eyeballs. I'm sorry, I think in front of my eyeballs. She thinks behind it, formulates a thought before she says it. And so she sounds, she is smarter than I am and much more articulate for that reason. but we both have a temptation in the midst of doing this questioning and listening, and that the extrovert will talk too much, kind of like I'm doing right now. And the introvert who does the thinking behind their eyeballs might be thinking about their next response more than they're listening. And so one of the tricks is to not only ask good questions to maintain this 80-20 rule, but then to be available and curious to what's being said.
Mhm.
And this kind of goes back to when I was saying, we show up at every listing appointment with this preconceived assumption that it's price and hassle, but we won't hear the woman who really valued that the paneling on her wall, or we might not hear the gentleman who lost his wife. And sometimes it happens even before we're with the people. And you have a great story of a listing that we got up in Moraga, that is one of the communities near where we work.
Mhm.
And you spoke with the seller on the phone for like an hour before we even got there for the listing appointment.
It was almost 2 hours, and I essentially did a listing appointment on the phone in a very non-listing appointment way. It was a conversation for 2 hours about why he loved that house and what their hopes and dreams were for moving forward onto the next phase of their lives. I think they were probably both in their 70s, very young 70s, but they wanted to spend time with grandkids. But they purchased this home on 7 acres way outside of town and just had this wonderful life out there. And one of the reasons that he was calling us was because when their old real estate agent, who was a friend of theirs and who they were still in contact with, sold them that house, she said to them, "Why do you want to live all the way out here?" She didn't get it. And it was rural property. And I guess she drove her Mercedes sedan across that bridge that you had to cross to get up a winding dirt road hill to the property, and got out in her 4-inch stiletto heels and just kind of went, "Ew, why do you want to live here?"
Yeah.
So, and they didn't call her to sell that house because they needed somebody who loved that property as much as they did. And so you and I went out the next day, and we loved that property.
No, but you gave me some advice before I showed up, though, right?
Yes, I didn't want us to show up in fancy cars and a three-piece suit, and I never wear stiletto heels anymore, but I definitely was going to do that. And my advice to you was, do not wear a suit, wear jeans and a
Yeah.
dress shirt.
Yeah.
And I mean, we weren't talking to a guy who was, some, you know, uh, ex-farmer. He was a CPA and an attorney, very well educated, very worldly. But he was a jeans and boots guy, you
Yeah.
know, and he
And
wanted some, and what? Go ahead.
okay, and work boots, not cowboy boots, work boots.
No, work boots. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think the other thing is, as I don't think he used this word first, but the way you told relayed the story about it, and then when we got to the property and was in this space, the word that came to mind was that it was a magical space.
Yeah.
And I think we
Phil's thinking about it.
yeah, and so I heard it secondhand, but you heard what he was saying about how they felt about the place. Most people love their homes, but this was even unique because of the nature of the property
Yeah.
and the remoteness of it, and the being kind of one with nature, but also he had an auto shop and a wood shop and all sorts of other things that
And 20 fruit trees and a canning kitchen
a
so they could
canning
make
kitchen.
jam every summer. I mean, it
Yeah,
was just an
yeah.
amazing place. And plus the rolling hills and the oak trees. And I mean, 7 acres of just heaven.
And so at some point, pretty early on to our in-person listing appointment, and I think we had already used the word magical, he said, "You don't need to do any more. We're ready to sign."
Yeah.
Because we had responded based on your conversation with him, not just the details. Oh, it's 7 acres. It has a wood shop. It's got how many plants? Like you just rattled off all these details. It wasn't because we had those details. It was because we appreciated kind of this hippie magical vibe, not quite living off the land, but some of that ethos, and we enjoyed it honestly, right? We weren't just saying we weren't just repeating, oh, we think it's magical in a mechanical sort of way, but we actually had the feelings that were caught up that he was expressing.
Yeah.
And I think that that is, that's kind of this next level of listening is you've got to hear what's being said and genuinely receive it and then alter how you respond to somebody based on that. I mean, people will sniff out if you're disingenuous, if you're faking it.
Yeah.
Um, and that's one of the great things about being in real estate is we get to make friends and relationships with all sorts of different people.
Yeah.
Uh,
And the other thing, not only did we appreciate the property the same way he did, I listened to him for 2 hours tell me why he loved that property when in a normal, quote, normal listing appointment, we would be saying, and we make floor plans and we do professional photography and we do beautiful brochures and I. And I didn't say any I sentences. I just listened to him tell me why he loved that property.
Yeah. So that's like so we're going back to the two basic things about listening is clarity and connection, right?
Yeah.
You heard that Sherry was able to do both those things, and I kind of got secondhand of being able to do that.
Well, you
And
could have done it. I just happened to get the phone call that
right,
day.
right, right, right. But for the sake of the story, so that when we actually showed up, we already had built some connections with them, and this is actually not uncommon. This is kind of an extreme case for a 2 hour pre-listing conversation.
Yeah.
But we very rarely feel like we walk into highly competitive listing appointments where there'll be other agents because we have built a lifetime of building relationships and connections with people
Hmm.
in our other areas of life. And then people are choosing to connect with us for real estate because they've trusted us. And so the heavy lifting at the listing appointment is much lighter. You still have to be able to talk about yourself, but the reality is yeah, real estate agents never retire; they just die. And there's two
I'm
reasons.
laughing.
Well, there's two reasons why I believe there's two reasons. One is we're not very good retirement planners. Like a lot of people that are self-employed, we don't put enough money in retirement. And so, if it's the primary income for yourself for your whole life, or if you're not married and that's the only income or whatever, you got to put money away for retirement. Otherwise, you're going to be working until you're 90.
Yeah.
But the reality is, here's the second reason for today's podcast to point out is that we spend a lifetime building relationships, and those relationships don't magically end when you hit 65. And so, if you've done it, built these relationships well, you may stop working as a real estate agent, but you still have those relationships, you still have your
Yeah.
knowledge, and people still call you. And
Yeah.
there are a couple of retired agents who give us referrals from their past clients because they don't want to be involved in doing the sales work anymore, but their sphere still reaches out to them because of the connections that they've made over a 40-year career or however long you've been in real estate.
Absolutely. You know,
Uh,
you and I do a lot of coaching, and one of the things we can teach a lot of people a lot of things in on how to sell real estate. What we can't teach them is how to make a connection.
Yeah, yeah, that is one of those skills. We can teach you how to be a better listener, and
Hmm.
we haven't really got into some of the tactical details about how you might do it.
Hmm.
Things like body posture, making eye contact, things like active listening, where you acknowledge things that have been said in a way that affirms the speaker. Um, we talked a little bit about hearing what's not being said and hearing the emotion and tone behind something.
Yeah.
Um, but but so you can work on those skills, but if you're not interested in other people's lives, it's much harder.
I
uh
agree. I think you can teach yourself to do the body posture and the listening and the affirming and things like that, but actual connection is innate.
yeah,
And some people have it, and many people have it, and some people just don't have it. I think you and I are pretty good at it. Um, but I become frustrated when I have somebody I'm mentoring, we're mentoring, and we can't teach them how to connect, and they don't know how to do it either.
yeah,
They
yeah,
often don't, they often don't make it in the business.
yeah. Well, you can learn how to pass a test. I think actually those relationships are a little bit harder.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting. We had a listing appointment yesterday with a past client or repeat client, and we treat everybody the same way, and it says we want to make sure you know all these details. And even though we've represented this person before and we've gone all through the details again, at one point he said, "I won't hold it against you that you had to give me all the details again," or something like that. It was like, it's okay, Adam. I trust you, right? I mean, he didn't need to know the details, not because I told him the same thing last time, but because I've spent 20 plus years building a relationship with him, and he knows that I'm a professional. I mean, he's now worked with Sherry, so he knows that Sherry is a professional too. But
But you're the primary.
but we've made the connection in such a way that we don't have to we don't have to worry about kind of the legal details. We take care of all everything. All right, risk management. You heard me say we're going to pay attention to the rules. But my point is that you don't have to be anxious about the communication because you know that if they have a question, they're going to ask you. And you do make the effort to demonstrate everything they need to know. And that's their right to kind of wave off from the details.
Well, he made it easy on us because he has worked with us twice, at least twice before. And really, he wanted to talk about the house that he needed to sell, his investment property, and it was really all about that. And we had to slip in a few things. We're going to do this for you and this for you and this for you. He's like, yeah, 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 I know. Been
Whatever.
there.
Yeah.
I've worked with you before.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Love clients like that.
Yeah. Well, it was even funny because we said we are going to do a floor plan, which is our normal shtick. And then he kind of reminded us in a funny way, it's a one bedroom townhouse. It's like the floor, you can draw it on the back of a napkin in 3 seconds.
You can see all rooms from the front door.
That's right. That's right. It's not quite a studio, but it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
open door to the bathroom. You can see the shower from the kitchen. What? Uh, anyway, there's so much more to talk about on this subject of agent intelligence. We didn't really talk about the kind of comparing it to AI, artificial intelligence. So more and more, just going to touch on it briefly, more and more, the public is going to be using AI tools when it comes to home searches. Just yesterday, we had a client run a home inspection through AI to see where the red flags are, and it picked up
Yeah.
a couple good things. I don't know if it was complete. We're not recommending that as a substitute for reading reports, but clients are going to be doing that. They're going to be able to have data, process data much more quickly than they used to. And so our value as agents is going to shift a little bit. It's not, but the best part about like what I've said is that like the relationships that we described with a couple of our clients, because we had a trusted relationship, they could hear us say things that an AI tool can never do. They can never, even though they could filter through a home inspection, they're not going to walk through a house and won't be able to say, well, this is what it might feel like to be this close to this school or this park, or what it's like to drive from Clayton all the way to the Walnut Creek BART station on Ignacio Valley during. They might be able to tell you the commute, but they might not be able to tell you the things that we know. That the city of Walnut Creek is always working on a lane on Ignacio all the time, or other stuff like that.
Well,
Uh,
not only can it can tell things like that probably, and it might someday, but what it can't do is hear the emotional response back to us.
right. It's never going to say to our client, your property is magical, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Um, and they can't walk through and say, this is what a buyer might see when they walk in, and it may be hard to paint over that mural. This is what's going to keep buyers from watching you. An AI tool will never be able to do that. So you got to lean into the things that we're irreplaceable on, and it's always been this way of being relational, doing good listenings for the clarity about what people's goals are, but then also to make a connection so they feel heard. That way, when you say you have to do something that's challenging, they trust you because you wouldn't have said it otherwise, and because you've made that connection.
Yeah.
Any other closing thoughts, Sherry?
Yeah, I mean, you and I use AI. We generated an image for our postcard last month through AI, which was really fun. I used it over the weekend to do a social media post for one of our new listings, and it did a way better job than I could have ever done. And it helped me put together a listing proposal after I had done all the legwork a couple of weeks ago. I pulled all the comps, I pulled all the statistics about the house, and dropped it into Chat GPT, and it spit out this beautifully designed listing proposal. So that is wonderful. I could have spent 3 hours doing that, and it did it in about 10 minutes. And so the way I look at it is it's very, very useful. It leaves me more time for the important stuff, which is face to face with my clients.
Yeah. All right. If you are thinking about being a real estate agent and you'd like to learn more about what it's really like and not just what salespeople are telling you, be sure to reach out to us. If you enjoyed this podcast, like and subscribe and recommend it to your clients. If you're interested in, if you've already been an agent, you're thinking about increasing your productivity and you like to do mentoring with us, we're available. Uh, what was my sign off for this one? I was about to do the
John Wooten.
John Wooden set
Wooden.
Wooden.
I'm not a sports person. I assume he's a sports guy because you all
He's a very famous
Wooden.
college basketball coach at UCLA that they won 10 national championships in 11 years. Went like 3 seasons at one point without losing a game. Coached people like Lou Alcindor, Bill Walton, amongst others. Uh,
Basketball's the one with the round ball, right? Not the oval
yes,
shaped ball.
potentially, yeah. Um,
I know what basketball is. Anyway,
yeah.
John
All right.
Wooden.
John Wooden says, nothing works if you don't work. All right, that's it. Have a good week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.